Alright guys, welcome back. We have finally got our parts in, so we're going to finish up the suspension and get this car back on the ground, or the Pathfinder back on the ground. So first thing we're going to do is open up our packages and see what we got. Don't mind the paint. My girlfriend decided that it was time to do some renovations of a bathroom, so we are in the process of doing that as well. Please excuse my voice, whatever, my coughing, clearing my throat. I am feeling a little under the weather, so I'm sorry for that. But let's see what we got here. I did get them from Rock Auto, as you can see. So, in the long box should be 2 wiper blades. Perfect. And we got sorry for the camera moving around a lot. Here is our ball joint. She looks perfect, which means that this one should be our which side does this come off? This is an interesting box. Which means this should be our outer tie rod. Did they do with this box? Alright, let's cut this one too. There we go. We got it all. So that means this should be our little Mazda Miata. This should be our outer tie rod. I went with AC Delco. It's kind of the middle of the range parts there. Name brand, but not the most expensive you can get. Which, I want quality going to whoever's going to buy it, but I don't want to break my budget. So it's kind of the perfect fit for my application. So what we got here is our outer tie rod. So we're gonna get these switched out real quick. Shouldn't be too hard. I think I'm gonna start with the ball joint because this one's gonna take a little bit more than this to get it back together, and then we'll close out with the wipers. So with that being said, let's get that ball joint changed out. So as you can see, we got those all tightened up. We just got to get this castle nut tightened up, but of course, because I didn't pick up my tools, I can't find the socket that I need. This is why you always pick up your tools. You don't spend all this time looking for a socket that you should have. I know I used it, because the other castle nut is the same size. I just don't know where I put it. It's gotta be up here. Well, I will check back in with you guys when when I find it. Alright guys, I found it. And it turns out it was the only one that I did put away. Haha. So we're all set up. I need to jack it up a little bit so I can get my gun underneath. I did just look to see where, hard to see with the lighting, but to see where the hole is for the cotter key. It is pointing towards the front of the truck, so that way I know where to look to see, because you got to get one of these grooves to line up with it in the castle nut. So with that being said, let's continue getting, let's wrap this up here on this side and then we'll move on to the tie rod. Just like that guys, we got our cotter pin in there in our castle nut. It's looking good, everything's tightened down. Now is time to move on to this tie rod. So the outer tie rod, because we're not replacing the inner, what you want to do is count the revolutions so that you can, it's not going to be perfect because everything here has to maintain the same the same geometry so you don't mess up your alignment. So basically what we're going to do, I wonder if this came with a cotter pin. Oh, it did. It's in there. Alright. So what you want to do is just double check to make sure that your length is the same, and it's not. So essentially what we want to do is mark this out in a way that shows, so it looks like the only difference is we don't have that nut. So I want to measure out the threads on that. So I will mark the threads on here with a marker or something, and then we'll measure this, mark it out, and then that's where we'll screw to here. I'm also going to count the revolutions, but because they are slightly different, the revolutions are not going to matter. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put it into the, I'm going to basically install it back into this, and then not move the wheel so that I get another kind of rough estimate on where it should be, all in an effort to not have to get an alignment for this. It eventually probably will need one, but if I can keep it pretty darn close, then we should be pretty good. So I'm going to mark this out, and then I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to count the revolutions when I take this off, so we can just keep track of as many things as we can to try to get it back to the exact same geometry that we're at now. Alright guys, and so for mine, we got a 15 down here, or I'm sorry, a 13 on this end, and then I've got a 22 for this side. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to count my revolutions until it comes off, and then we'll get that other one put back on. And I did mark it, by the way, so we can take that and then count out how far it would need to go. So we're going to try to get it back to the same spot, but if we really mess it up, then it is what it is. We'll go get an alignment. So let's get her done. Alright guys, so all we're going to end up doing is rounding off the inner tie rod shaft. So what I'm going to do is try to cut the outer tie rod shaft off, and see if we can't salvage it. If we end up ruining that, that's okay. We'll just end up buying that inner tie rod shaft and replacing that too. So let's see if we can't cut through that a little bit and maybe get that off without ruining it. So we are using our PPE, so Don't be beating me up for that either. Yeah, so let's start grinding. Alright guys, it looks like that we've got, let's see if I can show you. We've got just enough, we cut into it a little bit, but we got enough relief in there to get, Alright guys, so I do have a relief cut in there, which looks like it's allowing me to spin it, so that's good news. So let's do what we were going to do before. I think I burned off my marker. So I'm going to remark that, and then I am going to try replacing this. See, we'll count how many to get it off, and yeah, you guys know the deal. Well, it took 16 turns, but in getting it off, I have figured out why it was so hard to take off, because I'm an idiot. This is why I like doing it myself. I learn, and I'll never make that mistake again. I thought that this nut that I ground through was attached to that, which clearly it's not. It butts up to that, and that now makes complete sense to me. So unfortunately, or maybe, I look out and this is the same, and I can use this one. That would be awesome. Oh, we are maybe we'll look out. I'm not sure the thread is the same, but we will possibly use this nut on there, maybe? I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, that was totally my mistake. I totally understand how it works now, and I know why this flat is on here now. So it was 16 turns, and it's good to know that 16 turns will get me right back where I need to be. So with that being said, let's see if we can't get this nut to work. As long as it's the same, it is the same. As long as it's the same thread, it's the same width and everything, so it should work just fine. It's no different. So let's see. Alright guys, so what we did is we counted our 16 turns. We got ourselves a new nut. Looks pretty nice with that new shiny nut. And we started our castle nut. Everything is still loose, as you could see. I just wanted to hand tighten everything, kind of see if I can't make sure that everything is kind of lining up right. So what I'm gonna do is I am going to assume that that's good, because it's the exact amount that the last one, the other tie rod, went on. But when I get it all put back together, what I'm going to do is, because I did turn this a little bit, I'm going to measure just with a tape measure real quick, just to kind of make sure it's got at least a decent alignment. And I'll measure the front and the rear of the tires just to make sure that they're not towed, to try to get as much the same dimensions front and rear, so that there's not a odd toe on it, so that it drives relatively straight. So with that being said, let's tighten this stuff down, and we should be good to go. Alright, so now that we've got our nut here tight and our castle nut tight with our cotter key in, we can put all the front of the hub assembly back together. Shouldn't take too much. Shouldn't be really hard at all. It's all pretty straightforward. I think it's a total of, I really didn't even need to take those out, but I did because I wasn't really sure what I was doing. So we'll pop all those back in, and then we'll put that cover back on with these back in, and then we should be good to go. And just like that, guys, we got it all buttoned back up. We got the O-ring back in, or the snap ring back in. We got everything tightened down here. All of these tightened down. Everything here is tightened down. The other side's tightened and ready to go. All we gotta do is put the wheels on it and put it back on the ground. So let's do that. Alright guys, and just like that, we've got our... Ooh, it already doesn't look good. See, this wheel is definitely pointing to the right. Yeah, this one is a little bit, but not quite as much. So we may take it for an alignment anyway. Because that's not very good. I may get under there and try adjust it myself. But that should at least take care of our knocking noise in the front end. So, if you like what you see, please like, share, subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next video.